Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves stepping back into the stone embrace of a medieval castle. Imagine you're wrapped up snug in a cloak. You know, one of those oversized ones that could double as a fancy rug, surrounded by the chill of ancient stones and the soft dance of morning sun through arched windows. The scent of last night's fireplace lingers in the corners, mixing with the hint of something baking in the kitchens below. Shh. Listen closely. You can almost hear the echo of footsteps and the soft murmurs of life waking up, like the world's sleepiest orchestra tuning up for a day. You probably won't survive this without a warm drink by your side, but let's give it a go anyway. Before you get too comfy, feel free to tap like or subscribe, but only if you're genuinely enjoying the calm around here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is over there. I love seeing how far this sleepy little journey reaches. Now, go ahead and lower the lights. Maybe let a fan hum in the background, and let's drift gently into tonight's story together. You wake up in a small, dimly lit chamber. The stone walls are decorated with the occasional threadbare tapestry, each a colorful tale frozen into fabric. It's cold, but you've got woolen covers pulled up to your chin, and you're tucked in bed so tight that even a well-aimed catapult couldn't budge you. Outside your tiny window, the sun peeks over the horizon, painting the courtyard below in hues of orange and gold. You can hear the stirrings of castle life coming to life, the cooks starting their day in the kitchens, clattering pots and debating last night's juicy gossip. Down the hallway, footsteps echo as servants rush about, ensuring everything is in place long before any lord or lady opens their eyes to complain about, well, anything. Now, here's something you might find amusing. In a medieval castle, decorations weren't exactly what you'd expect. Instead of scrolling through Pinterest for aesthetic inspiration, they used means much less Instagram-worthy. Strategically placed buckets for rain leaks and blankets over drafty doorways. Talk about medieval life hacks. Part of you wonders how many tapestries could rival an influencer's backdrop, despite hanging around for centuries. Historians still argue whether castles were first built mainly for comfort or defense. I mean, let's be real. They were probably just trying to make the whole living in a big cold fortress more bearable. Anyway, as you stretch your limbs and kick off your warmest socks, you realize how easy it would be to just say 5 more minutes and hit snooze in the castle hosted by ye old alarm rooster outside. You stumble out of bed, guided by the flicker of a candle stub threatening to give up at any moment, and head to the window. The world outside buzzes with activity. Peasants are moving about their daily tasks. Chickens peck at the ground, and somewhere a dog barks defiantly, as if barking at time itself. Also, bonus fact, did you know that in medieval times, the cluck of a chicken was arguably as important as any morning news feed we scroll through today? You throw on whatever clothes you can find, cloth that looks rough enough to file your nails on, but here we are, all about authenticity, and prepare to greet the day. You won't believe this, but back then, deciding what to wear was easy. Most people only had about 2 outfits. Imagine the ease of decision when your closet's a no-brainer. So there you are, slightly chilly, but feeling like you could conquer, or at least survive, a medieval day. You remember, there's a stale crust of bread somewhere from yesterday, and you're so hungry you could even eat it without popping it into a toaster first. Note, medieval toaster technology was in, well, a primitive state. All right, Imagine rolling out of your stone chamber, ready to face whatever mysterious adventures the day holds. If you can only avoid stepping barefoot into any unidentifiable squishy things. That's the spirit of castle mornings. A bit of curiosity, a splash of resilience, and just maybe, a dash of dramatic flair. You make your way down the stone corridor, the echoes of your footsteps mingling with those of other early risers. The smell of baking bread drifts up from below, probably as close to breakfast scents as they had back then, although it's more of a mood-setting hint than a promise. Let's be honest, medieval breakfasts weren't exactly the stuff of foodie dreams. They were likely to include some form of thick stale bread, maybe a bit of cheese if you were lucky, and if the stars aligned, a splash of watered-down ale. Perfect for kick-starting a day of feudal fun, right? You can't help but imagine how some quirky medieval figure might react to the breakfast idea of avocado toast. A what toast? Avocados from where? They'd exclaim, probably while trying to wrap their heads around the notion of breakfast as a culinary event. As you wander past a small corner nook, you overhear two servants sharing a light-hearted jest about their superiors. Believe it or not, medieval folks definitely shared a sense of humor. Perhaps not about TikTok trends or the frustrations of autocorrect, but universal themes like those peculiar, grumbling morning routines. You reach the lower levels, where the great hall pulses with the kind of busy energy that only half-awake early birds understand. It's adorned with heavy wooden tables, benches that bear the scratch marks of 1,000 casual sword sheaths, and enormous hearths struggling to warm the tastefully chilly space. Unlike a quaint brunch spot playing soft jazz, this place is all hustle and quiet buzz, with snippets of conversations floating above the clattering tableware. Here's a weird tidbit. The Great Hall doubled as a bedroom for many of the castle's inhabitants at night. The idea of tossing and turning with a dozen companions, with armor clanking in the next sleeping bag over, might make our concept of personal space blush. You know, like when you're on a red-eye flight, hoping your neighbor doesn't lean their seat back into your dream bubble. Historians argue about whether the busiest part of castle life was centered around breakfast or the winding up of daily duties. Legitimately, life here was like waking up in a perpetual camping ground, filled with neighbors. Did the team effort make mornings lighter? Or was it all a jarring riot of noise and awkward elbow nudges? You're now attempting to blend into the morning bustle and using the age-old tactic of mirroring confidence. No one has noticed you've mysteriously appeared in the timeline like a guest star in an otherwise period drama. Yet, through all the commotion, you find your way to a table and spot the standard fare, some form of oat porridge and bread that's one chew away from being considered rustic. The food on the table might look humble, but some of it, believe it or not, was essentially medieval luxury. That cold porridge might have been a delicacy, akin to breaking your last meal prep day's suffering with a treat-yourself slice of greasy pizza. Naturally, Cherry's Jubilee, it was not. Trying whatever's on the plate, the taste isn't exactly what's been promised by the seductive breakfast aromas. All right, who's kidding who? It's serviceable. You chew thoughtfully while pondering Castle's timeless charm. Such cold ambiance, yet buzzing like a hive after waking. Sometimes it feels like one big inside joke we're all craving to understand. And that's breakfast in a medieval castle. A simple tale spun with a little charm, a little chuckle, and maybe the same headache as setting up your first coffee machine. All the while, somewhere deep down, there's the simple joy of being part of something larger than the sum of its scrappy, quirky parts. What peculiar yet perfectly pedestrian wonders await next on this timeless trip? You finish your medieval breakfast with a slight longing for the unrealistically smooth convenience of a Pop-Tart, and then you wander further into the castle, curiosity as your guide. Your next stop, the Great Hall, is buzzing like a medieval marketplace, and you're drawn there almost instinctively, kind of like scrolling through a feed past midnight, even though your eyes beg for sleep. The Great Hall, with its expansive arched ceilings and rows of long tables, is like the castle's heart, or maybe its stomach, considering the place is usually bustling with activity right before and after meals. Here, every sound seems amplified. The scrape of a bench across stone echoes like a portal closing in a fantasy novel. The murmur of chatter, like the persistent hum of a summer fan. People are hustling about, each with their own morning mission, and an air of do not disturb determination, akin to that of city commuters heading for their daily grind. The hall is where you'll find a fascinating blend of characters, from busy servants scurrying around like ants finding their way back to the nest, to the court's higher-ups indulging in the fine art of loafing around, wine goblets in hand. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, after all. Even in the dark ages, somehow, there's a little delight in the continuity of nibbling on crusty bread, while nobility debates the significance of a well-aged cheese's noble aroma. Here's a quick, quirky note. Tapestries are draped along the walls, depicting tales and battles almost cartoonishly, like the medieval version of comic strips. Don't even get started imagining that these woven masterpieces were the original memes. Okay, maybe that's stretching it, but still, you'd be surprised to see the humor and drama carefully sewn into these threads. Errors just as unavoidable as a typo in a tweet. So you wander along these tapestries, riveting yourself with the colorful chaos when you notice how they serve multiple purposes. It cushions noise, adds insulation, and fulfills all medieval decor quirks. No kidding. If Instagram were around, this art would have been meticulously tagged for every historical Marx aesthetic. Historians still argue whether the Great Hall was solely for practical meals or served deeper cultural significance in its design. Were these spaces consciously setting cultural standards, or was it just make it big so everyone fits? Was it about impressing guests with sheer volume of interior chill? The jury's still out on that one, like one of those unsolved whodunits from cable TV. Anyway, as your eyes drift over the hall, or maybe it's your feet, it occurs to you how these gatherings weren't just for camaraderie and food. Events held here could spark court politics, the medieval equivalent of office meetings, but with fewer PowerPoints and more direct threats. And the best part? Gossip flies through this room like a sparrow, which brings more lightheartedness than the dim glow of the chandeliers above suggests. Now, listen to this. Medieval kings and lords often entertain themselves by engaging in subtle banter about games and hunting events, which, if we're honest, were probably thinly disguised contests of bragging rights. Just picture them, in garb too fancy to quite breathe in, turning to one another with, "Do you hawk, bro?" flaunting the same eagerness as today's sports enthusiasts. You sit down on an unexpectedly warm wooden bench, taking a rare moment to just watch how life flows through this grand room. Think of it like marveling at time-lapse footage, a flash of humanity in a space built to endure. It's amusing to think that these folks, with their doublets and fancy feast day hats might have had the same anxieties, laugh-induced snorts, and morning-after grumblings as you or me. In the end, you find yourself pulled into the rhythm of medieval life, a little like the satisfaction of completing a puzzle you didn't know you started. It's in these shared spaces that castle life is at once incredibly foreign and faintly familiar. As with most things in the medieval world, even a place as grand as the Great Hall is less about where you are and more about the people who breathe life into these stone and timber bones. Leaving the vivid cacophony of the Great Hall behind, you step out into the castle gardens. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of earth and herbs, with a hint of wildflowers that stubbornly colored this monochrome landscape. It's akin to the comforting aroma when you open your favorite book, the one you've read 100 times. But every time, it feels like the first page turn. The gardens are a world apart from the bustling castle interior. Here, the quiet is punctuated only by the occasional yawn from an early rising peasant attempting to coax life into the vegetable patches. The overgrown paths twist and turn, like the long sentences in medieval manuscripts, full of tangents and surprises. As you stroll amidst well-tended rows of herbs and wildly mismatched flowers, you start realizing that medieval gardening wasn't just about beauty. These people were growing dinner and medicine right next to the marigolds. Now, here's a quirky tidbit to color your imagination. These gardens weren't just the domain of ladies in pointy hats or monks with a penchant for solitude. They were communal spaces where people gathered to gossip as much as to prune. Imagine brushing elbows with history's gardeners in choreographed chaos, much like that friend you call over not to help cook, but to reinforce your reality TV commentary. Hey, did I mention that some fruits and veggies were suspect back then? Tomatoes, for instance, were considered poisonous for ages, probably earning them the medieval version of a conspiracy theorist's blog. Factors like these cemented gardens as places of mystery and intrigue as much as nourishment. As you trail your fingers through the wafting leaves of a rosemary bush, you can't help but wonder if it's the same plant from which your great-great-grandperson might have brewed an anti-anxiety cordial. Turns out, horticulture was less like a Netflix series binge and more like a choose-your-own tincture adventure. And don't even get started on medieval plant names. Plenty of tongue twisters to make even the most verbose wizard trip up. Devil's bit scabious, anyone? No? Okay, moving on then. Historians still argue whether these gardens symbolized a microcosm of paradise so often depicted in art, or if they were just pragmatic patches of untouched land assigned to keep everyone from running out of dinner options. Were they the forerunners of private retreats, or just in plain sight storage units for the food-obsessed? A fascinating question to sit with as you let a pagoda whisper tales into the breeze. The stone benches scattered throughout the garden invite you to sit and let your mind wander, much like you'd lounge in your PJs, doing absolutely nothing, yet feeling so deeply content. You watch as tiny birds dart and dive, their flitting shadows taking fleeting cover under broad leaves. Their movements speak of an urgency, but one so playfully enticing, it could almost be orchestrated by a conductor of wind and wings. And then there are the bees, a spiral of golden orbs darting among the blooms, busying themselves like tiny fluffy drones set to pollinate in all shades of medieval indifference. Their tiny dances and choreographies are not unlike those of the court feasts, chaotic, buzzing, and entirely necessary for the aesthetic harmony. As you make your way deeper into this verdant space, you come across a little patch of earth cared for with more love and detail than the rest. It's here you find an old gardener, bent over his work, a human kaleidoscope of strata mixing sun-warmed earth with the freshness of seed and sprout. His gentle tending reminds you of a kind of care that doesn't require words, like when you send a LOL without actually laughing. Because underneath, there's a thread of understanding that sounds louder than any laughter. Despite being steeped in the rustic ambiance, there's an odd familiarity about the place. A reminder that whether past or future, a bit of greenery and shared solitude will always tether us all to a quieter, more nurturing pace. It's here, beneath this green cathedral, you ponder what it means to cultivate not just land, but stories, secrets, and occasionally, those mushrooms that no one's quite sure whether to eat or avoid. A balancing act echoed through time. These gardens wrap the castle in a cocoon of whispers and scents. As you leave the serene castle gardens, the calm of nature dissolves into the earthy bustle of the castle's core. Your meandering steps lead you toward one of the castle's most notorious features, the medieval plumbing system, or lack thereof. Sure, today's modern bathroom might boast heated floors and whispering faucets, but here, the facilities are more of an adventure than an amenity. Imagine standing helplessly before an old stone chamber pot, like it's a puzzle you never wanted to solve. Enter the world of the medieval garderobe, a small, often drafty nook built into the castle walls, perched over the moat or latrine, with just enough room for unpleasant surprises. If you've ever fumbled at night to the bathroom door, only to realize there's no more toilet paper, you can appreciate the trials faced by a medieval castle dweller. Here's the fun fact. These nifty little window rooms were sometimes called garderobes because they were designed far enough from living spaces to store clothes. Yup, clothes. Envision that for a second. They believed the strong odors would ward off moths, though. Honestly, it might just chase the moths to join an aroma-free revolution elsewhere. Some castle garderobes had rudimentary systems, a fancy term for a slight decline where gravity, the indifferent bully of physics, lent its help in waste removal. Some folks even had the delightful joy of shared amenities, factoring in a sort of team effort or a painfully reluctant morning meetup area. Historians still argue whether castles' plumbing could be considered innovative for its time or just desperately functional. Was this the height of ambition or simply necessity cackling atop a stone seat? The debate continues, like the eternal question of why socks disappear in the laundry. As you make your way back into the castle, marveling at the medieval solutions to a modern problem, you imagine the interior hallways that absorb a fair mix of vinegar and herbs combining with the forever damp stone. It's not quite lavender air freshener, but improvisation seems to have been the medieval jam. As you're daydreaming about how anyone got their laundry done at all, because drier settings back then were probably called wind and the other wind, something catches your eye. There's a servant rushing past you with an expression so focused, it's reminiscent of someone late for an ominous dentist appointment. Garlic clove necklace jingling merrily as they rush forward. You can't help but smile. It seems the castle's plumbing wasn't the only thing making mornings eventful. You proceed through the castle halls, skirting past busy corners where servants and nobility zigzag across cobbles like a game of medieval Frogger. In the midst of this delicate dance, a passing jester offers up an impromptu floor show. A man juggling apples, likely considered skyrocketing to greatness in food entertainment back then, drawing laughter from a crowd around him. You can't help but chuckle. realizing that humor cuts across centuries with the sharpness of a well-honed dagger. Past all the haphazard construction, medieval life rolls on. Ingredients for a life spent within these walls stretch from deception to jollity, just like the fragrant trail of spicy peppers strung up along the kitchen walls, a natural deterrent against pests, and a hint that culinary curiosity has always daubed the palate of history. It's a reminder, too, that life in a medieval castle is as much a patchwork of challenge and charm as scrolling through all 27 tabs illuminated on your screen at night. Utterly chaotic, yet continuously fascinating, moments like these blur the lines between then and now, showcasing that while centuries may stack like bricks in these walls, human nature remains a constant echo, one that carries through laughter, lessons, and, quite literally, nightmarish plumbing. You edge away from the quirky but entertaining chaos of medieval architecture, puzzlingly referred to as plumbing, feeling compelled to explore the life of those who decorated the castle halls in clinking armor and gallant airs. You find yourself outside the training grounds, where a mix of shouting, clanging metal, and the soft thud of practice knights turned jousters fills the air. If you squint a little, bits of the scene might remind you of an extreme medieval boot camp, although these knights are far from posting their progress on social media. A day in the life of a castle knight is anything but PSG. Pretty sleek and glamorous. Forget curated selfies, since the armor alone weighs about 50 pounds more than anyone likes to lift without cause. Watching knights suit up is the medieval equivalent of struggling to put on a pair of stubborn skinny jeans, with more grunting than you'd likely admit. You can almost hear one complaining, "Does this chainmail make my tunic look bulky?" That quintessential clatter? It's the sound of a squabble over who's mislaid a gauntlet, or awaiting a squire's timely rescue mission when unexpectedly enveloped by their own gear. Somebody please inform the medieval choreographers. There's an easier, less clunky way to dance. Here's a nugget of history. Knights who trailed the king were like the medieval seal of cool, social armor and all. No wonder armor had all-star appeal, even if it did take 15 minutes just to stake it all on. Historians still argue whether jousting was more than just an elaborate flex. Was it training, entertainment, political posturing? Was it merely the medieval version of a reality demolition derby? Or were these conquests embedded within deeper knight's code and pageantry? They jump on their birds of steel, lined up for a recital that involves more than just being left hooked. It's hard not to admire their determined faces, uplifted amidst the clash and clunking of shields, like the heartbeat of living history. But you can't help but picture a knight peeking out of their helmet to check on the morning score. The moat monsters versus the distant destriers. No streaming available, alas, unless you count the flow of sunlight cascading off their formidable helmets. As the practice ends, the knights filter out, scratching at armor clasps and mumbling remarks muffled by their helmets. One can't resist the jab. Well, if that isn't the ironclad lifestyle, laughter ripples through them, blending with the scrape of metal on stones. Join in as some knights relax on rickety benches, sharing lively tales of skirmishes like soldiers recounting a midnight gaming session of skirmishes. The battlefield, mixed with fantasy, sweetened by love, for an era still lapping at tales, recounted over mugs of ale. As you watch, it's clear that these nights live in a present punctuated by anticipation, in mindfulness that revels daily in the forging of bonds upon which lives can be hoisted. The air is filled with a rugged connectivity, whether they're practicing maneuvers on the field or jostling one another post-meal for the last meat pie slice. Yet beneath the rust and individual badges of honor, there's camaraderie, artistry, skill, and a yearning for one more gallant coat of glory. Whether a glimpse of iron screws under the sun's scrutiny or their shared laughter reverberating through quiet corridors, there's more than armor trailing knights. They carry dreams of legacy, wisdom on patience, flourished beyond swords clashed or helmets clapped. They're knights of stories, like long-standing conversations with a passionate friend. They remind, today like yesteryear, what it means to battle, bond, and believe in valiant narratives between modern settings and stone-clad castles. The day unfolds like a tapestry as you drift from the knight's training grounds to a quieter corridor where the echoes of metal on metal fade, replaced by the soft rustle of parchment and the hushed dedication of those who serve the castle beyond the grandeur of armor. The air here is filled with the scent of beeswax and ink, the quiet industry of those whose work involves more than might, those dedicated to word, wisdom, and whispered tales in the script scrawled upon paper. You find yourself near the castle library, a sanctuary for the scholarly souls who graze these pages, gathering strings of thought like pearls. The library is a world unto itself, filled with dusty tomes stacked haphazardly, each book a treasure chest of medieval knowledge and the occasional flight of fancy. Its careful chaos reminds one of leaving half-open tabs on your desktop, claiming you're totally coming back to them. Pile after pile, it's a verbose investment that libraries have been hoarding time out of necessity, just like the scent of second-hand books. Among the shelves, you imagine scholars and scribes, perhaps hunched over like digital age developers, deciphering lines between lines, deciphering ways of life unheard in corners, yet known amidst the morning serenades of the unseen crow. And guess what? These castles didn't just store wisdom. They housed some of the quirkiest narratives. Take, for instance, one medieval manuscript hilariously depicting knights engaging in the epic battle of snails. Yes, snails. Was it a metaphor? Misunderstanding? Just a hiccup of medieval imagination? Historians scratch their heads even now. Sometimes tales spun in ink are left suspiciously sly, without context, clearer than the edge of shadow creeping in the windowsill. Historians still argue whether the library housed only pristine volumes or an eclectic motley of secret knowledge. Spells, herbology, and intrigue stacked upon dusty religious tomes. Was the library more laboratory than library, or simply assembled under the quiet echo of scholars too smart or paranoid to abandon bygone schemes? As you meander through these amazing aisles, your fingers trail lace-like cobwebs, resting on spines like loose threads paused between stitching. Here and there, notes scribbled upon margins like, well, comments frozen in time. Was it a moment of frustration or processed insight? Literally, the medieval version of underlining choice words. Forget a like button. Instead, picture followers committed to transcribing an entire book's worth of knowledge manually to comment. Scripting culture, spelling obscurity, worth diving through motives buried behind worn, leather-bound covers that still manage to breathe gently scented whispers of history. And here is where the lady of the castle makes her entrance. Dressed in rich fabrics, she moves through the stacks with an air of authority quenched in curiosity. The lady's shadow trails behind, curious, like her thoughts that comb dusty passages between days swept forward loaning warmth. a scholarly librarian and domestic matron, simultaneously, with Grace sometimes caught by candlelight on lanterns draping amorphous corridors. Watching her browse these volumes, you get the sense that maybe steering this medieval microcosm demanded as much intellectual prowess as wielding a sword. It's like when you're trying to organize that one drawer filled with miscellaneous chargers, one eye twitching on every unidentified wire, and another curled around mystic symbols resting upon pages originally carved to inspire discourse. Closer in discord than estrangement. The lady pauses at a shelf, fingers tracing over the gilded spine of a tome whose origins are as duskily mysterious as they are linguistically tangled. There's a calmness in her movements, a swell of resonance synchronizing that reminds us of time's passage comforted, binding something beautiful, too over time, with the humility of preserving thoughts regardless of their initial measure. Space starts to shift as those words you've read come alive, like realizing the book's dog-eared page contains not just a simple bookmark, but an invitation to pursue an older reality, one no less filled with whispers or questionably engaged terracotta-colored commitment papers. It's here in this place of learning. Time washes over everything, like a quiet tide made of moments, serenading tender instruments wielded in rhythm upon vellum. It captures the spirit of discovery in curious notes of silence that echo louder than any march or forge clamor. This cadence reminds one it's perfectly all right to drift between stacked existences, in tales spun half chaotically beside the composed, something reaching beyond the stone walls, calling us all gracefully nearer. You wander further into the castle, your footsteps resounding lightly against cold stone floors as the library's calm lingers in your thoughts. Your journey takes you into the lively bustle of the castle kitchen. And if the library was a sanctuary of silence, this place is the beating heart, filled with the sound of ladles clattering, pots bubbling, and the occasional laugh mixing with the steam that carries scents tantalizing enough to inspire envy from any modern-day foodie influencer. It feels like stepping into one of those cooking shows you watch while eating instant noodles, questioning your life choices. The kitchen is a whirlwind of activity, with cooks and kitchen hands deftly moving around each other in a dance choreographed by daily urgency. It's the kind of chaos that teeters precariously between delight and disaster. One wrong step, and a perfectly baked pie crust could meet the floor, ready to become a story shared with a rueful smile over that evening's meal. Here's something to tickle your taste buds. Medieval castle kitchens were the testing grounds for all sorts of recipes and experimentation, long before anyone could fried rice their way to TikTok fame. Sweet pies filled with meats, spices as valuable as currencies, and wines potent enough to spark diplomacy. They played with flavors like we play with emojis, sometimes using just the right pinch, other times creating flavors no one could quite interpret. And then there were feast days, which were the castle's own kind of spectacle, with massive roasts and indulgent pastries, all assembled to impress the guests with culinary feats that rivaled the tales of knights and damsels. They say food is a way to the heart, and here it was often a way to politics, negotiations often seasoned as generously as the food itself. Historians still argue whether these feasts were solely about lavishness, or if they served deeper diplomatic functions, a power display or culinary cunning behind every bite. Either way, you're left to imagine what a not-so-great feast day might sound like. A splash of too much salt. Oops, there goes an alliance. As you watch the kitchen crew work their magic, you can't help but think that medieval cooks must have been culinary superheroes. Their strength, driven by gruel-fueled explosives and spice exploration. Though no lasers nor cyborgs, an engaging reveal and benediction as hour ran for their guys. Here's a peculiar morsel for thought. The medieval garnish implies more of a double-edged spear than a casual detour on a leaf. There were dishes with literal live birds used for dramatic effect. Picture cutting into a pie, only to have pigeons, a la 4 and 20, spring out and wing through the room. It's avian pandemonium, in the most literal sense, certainly adding surprise as one unforgettable course option. Take a deep breath. The kitchen is redolent with spice and stories, a boiling stew of life ingredients sharing too little, too much history, juxtaposing treasured flavors charged with seasoned legends, recipes indeed so richly bound. The zing of cinnamon curls into the warmth of cloves, mingling with the sharpness of herbs. Each ingredient, a descendants mirroring the dances you think could lastly conjure beyond thresholds painting synthesis. There's an older cook, pot spoon held like a, not so menacing scepter. Her weathered hands dart to and fro, training younger apprentices with guidance imparted like whispers in a bustling market square. Her wisdom flows like that secret family recipe, never recorded, except in reminiscence transmitted orally. The true lineage from grandmother to grandchild. Platonic shadowing, consistent reconciling aroma diffusal. It's a peek into the orchestrated mayhem of turning stone walls into a home, one feast at a time. In this realm of simmered symphonies, cutlery crescendos, and sous vide-inspired serenades, you dig your heels deeper into historical soil. Emboldened by alchemical curiosity, cooking sacred flame beneath ice-kissed stone, thickening tales, a savory reflection, rippling sweetened antiquity bathing, just that first nibble of a communal meal shared amidst an age burgeoning discoveries. You step out of the bustling kitchen, the scent of medieval feasting still clinging to you like a comforting blanket of herbs and warmth. Your next destination invites a different kind of thrill, one that sends a little shiver down your spine and tantalizes your imagination. You're off to explore the castle's legends and lore, specifically the spooky whispers and fantastical tales of ghosts said to roam the stone halls. Cue the eerie music, right? Or maybe just the hum of a distant wind through drafty corridors setting the ambiance. Walking through dimly lit passageways, you can almost feel the presence of those who have come before, half expecting a specter to float by with a resigned sigh. The castle, after all, is like a vessel of memories, each stone holding on to echoes of laughter, whispers, and the occasional fading footfall of those who tread here long before our time. It's enough to make you wonder if walls could indeed hold secrets as audible as your own reflection on plastic. There's one story in particular that's so deeply weaved into castle lore, it's become almost inseparable from the truth, about the Grey Lady, a spectral figure said to drift silently through the corridors, searching for something lost beyond the veil of time. Is she looking for closure, recompense, or perhaps a misplaced tapestry she was tasked to mend several centuries ago? Historians ponder, and no consensus emerges from the fog of speculation. Historians still argue whether ghost stories originated as methods for explaining accidents and odd occurrences, or if they arose from deep-seated fear of the unknown. A spiritual placeholder, that dual serves intrigue and bewilderment. Maybe it's like those inexplicable tech hitches that send you down rabbit holes at 3 a.m. never finding updates or fixes, but mysterious in their persistence. And here's a curious twist. Some believe the Gray Lady is not a singular ghost, but rather a tapestry of personas from different centuries, her presence as ambiguously woven as her fabric self. It's a thought-provoking haunt, offering more of a community outreach than individual welcomer into the matter's furrows, while veiled confidences linger. Maybe until recorded edges of history gate elusive wanderers. And then there's the castle's own finger wag to skeptics, the ghost tower reputed for strange lights and noises, much like the midnight itch, compelling you to check your hallway for creaking flats. But instead, it's a spectral light show atop dizzying stair steps that conjure amusement, a theater of fluctuating origin. You wander down a corridor blanketed in shadows, yet like all rumored hauntings, there's a feeling of being simultaneously watched and welcomed. You'll wonder if, with each breath that turns vapor in the cool air, you're sharing space with those once royal members, generational fragments, flickering, lantern-lit, torch-quenched, torches that instead light phantom echoes. Every castle keeper from generations past, sleeping guards, or half-burrowed intrigue rises alongside you. All live here now. It's a feeling kind of spooky, yet comfortingly stoic, as if they don't mind the company through an energy-tethered connection that bridges lesser-known turnings in time. And just like reading an ending, while relishing every chapter, stories unfurl upon stone, marking disparate lives into collisions and fusing their soft angles encountered between translation and myth-making adventure. Ghosts, it seems, like most retold family histories, reside not so much as fears beckoning scarcity, but as laughing phantoms soothing reconciliation, reminding us that stories, like spirits and scrolls, carry a spark forever, beyond the castle's heavy, creaking doors. Leaving the spectral stories behind, with a mix of fascination and a touch of relief that your journey didn't include a ghostly run-in, you step into the castle's bustling courtyard. Here, the vibe is refreshingly alive, if not downright chaotic, as if you've suddenly wandered into a medieval version of a weekend farmer's market. The courtyard thrums with activity, each corner filled with the commotion of tradespeople, merchants, and shoppers busily bartering over goods. It's a scene reminiscent of sale days at a bustling department store, minus the shopping carts, but definitely with all the haggling flair. Medieval markets were more than just places to buy necessities. They were the social media feeds of their time, where gossip spread faster than you can scroll. Snippets of conversation are caught in passing. Stories of distant towns, snippets of outrageous claims on the quality of cabbage, and exaggerated tales exchanged with the same intensity as modern memes. Here's a quirky nugget. In medieval times, haggling was an art form, much like crafting the perfect Instagram caption. One would never simply accept the first offer. Oh no, that would be too easy. Instead, merchants and buyers engaged in verbal sparring, as intricate and strategic as a game of chess, each move designed to save or earn an extra few coins. Imagine a theatrical performance with players keen to outwit one another cleverly, the words flying as skillfully as arrows to strike a bargain. As you walk among the stalls, you hear one vendor loudly proclaiming the miraculous iodine content of their salt, which is, of course, the finest from locations you've never heard of, and some you suspect might be cherry-picked from imagination. Introduce the eyebrow raise emoji as a silent retort to such claims, unfortunately lost to time. But amidst this lively gathering of goods and trades, merchants wield more than goods. They trade stories and experiences, binding communities just as strongly as knights with swords, immersed in vows, congregate in slippery postures amongst dank corridors, previewing interior ends of a warrior's waking flight. Historians still debate whether these market gatherings were more about economic necessity or social engagement. One wonders if they were just friendly competitors fighting for foot traffic, or a diplomatic blend of sales and camaraderie in a sweet historical mall of memory. The diversity of goods is staggering with every turn. Intricately woven fabrics, reminiscent of modern haute couture, are draped over wooden frames. A fruit stand charms with colors that could tempt still life painters. Spices perfumed in vibrant hues fill the air, lending an exotic allure that complements the hum of languages spoken with unfamiliar tongues. A symphony of trading that transcends time. Amidst the activity, you spot a merchant engaged in an enthusiastic pitch about glassware, boasting, "as clear as the finest lake on a windless day." An ideal for capturing the essence of fine wine, or just your everyday medieval ale. A crowd gathers, enchanted by both the merchant's mastery of words and the glint of sunlight through glass. Its storytelling with props before show and tell gained cultural footing. And then there are the acrobats, musicians, and street performers. Medieval street cred, if you will. Lively diversion for those with a moment to spare. Their routines delight young and old alike. The jingle of a tambourine, the squeal of a reed, laughter and applause signals the triumph of entertainment intertwined with commerce. As you find yourself part of this vibrant tapestry, there's something heartening about the relentless human desire to connect, to exchange not only goods, but smiles and stories, colorful memories woven effortlessly into the patchwork, creating warmth that never fades beyond soft edges of sunlight forever at play. In this marketplace, past and present becomes a shared experience, bartering culture, connecting humankind through whispers in time, sidestepping the maze of stone and echoing side streets. It's enough to make you realize that while centuries apart, the symphony of life buzzes along its track, filled with joyful abundance, readiness, always wrapped, eternally spun. Leaving the vibrant swirl of the courtyard market behind, you venture next into the realm of medieval medicine, a world both fascinating and, frankly, a little unsettling for modern sensibilities. Imagine stepping into a space where the air is a curious mix of herbal incense and something decidedly more pungent. The phrase, "just walk it off," probably applied less when walking it off might land you in the hands of an overly enthusiastic medieval healer with a penchant for leeches and hot pokers. In this small, dimly lit chamber, the local healer is busy concocting remedies for ailments of every conceivable kind. The shelves are lined with vials and jars, each labeled with florid script, dubious promises of cures that boast all the reassurance of a sketchy late-night infomercial. It's like a medieval version of sifting through WebMD articles and ending up convinced that your mild headache is something far more dramatic. Here's a quirky tidbit. One popular medieval remedy for various illnesses involved a brew of wine mixed with herbs, spices, and sometimes a hint of, wait for it, sacrificed animal parts. This potion was believed to chase away spirits, sickness, and possibly in-laws. It's like a medieval smoothie with a twist, or perhaps the original recipe for a particularly dubious energy drink. As you watch the healer meticulously measure herbs with a seriousness rivaling that of a scientist conducting groundbreaking research, you learn that leech therapy was a go-to solution for all sorts of ailments. Believe it or not, These little vampires were more common in medieval medicine than we might comfortably admit. Pop one on a bruise and let nature, albeit mildly horrifying, take its course. Historians still argue whether medieval medicine helped progress the scientific tradition, or if it hindered more than it healed. Was it a bunch of trial and error witch hunts amassed into hopeful puffs? Or enough of a genuine theory to declare it's how good health whimsically persists past aches unexplained? All around you, this space hums with activity, from remedy mixing to whispered consultations with patients caricatured by ailments now deemed medieval or incurably cursed. A constant pageant of diagnostics completed beyond the grasp of witches, loaded with the hopes of a superstition-marked peasantry eager to live another day. Perhaps without pestilential swoons or shriveling risk of contagion communalized through recombinant affinity. But it wasn't just odd concoctions and mysterious elixirs. Medieval folk also strongly believed in the protective power of amulets and talismans. Adorning oneself with bits of iron or wood, they reasoned, was effective not just against evil spirits, but also as good luck charms, perhaps a relic of comfort, like seeking assurances in a fortune cookie after good news. A feel-good quirk finds its way to you. They often recommended laughter as part of the treatment. Should illness of the lungs require lighter spirits? Stressed out? Try humor, they whispered, in a suggestion that sentiment shared over centuries rings clear alongside today's relish in laughter yoga. You weave through the room where newly crafted potions take place, reminiscent of a kitchen's busy concoction of teas and epic culinary dramas, staying so subtly intriguing as to remove half-faded phrases in an unfinished itinerary, yet irresistibly vibrant in full illumination. Despite its dubious methodologies, there's underlying charm and curiosity about these ancient ways, endeavors to fight ailments with nothing more than nature's help and the human spirit, echoing those universal ambitions to heal, to comfort, to steadfastly embrace each day's promises. You move past, feeling a flipbook of countless sensations quicken pulse, a little bewildered, unconsciously adept at flipping subsistence chapters back, with curiosity satisfied once more. Medieval medicine, chronicled in whispers, warmed by hearths casting doubts, finds its spirits bounding in firmer ground. With a mind to quaint wonders, you note silently a burst of something achingly familiar like joy, slightly healing over time. Your path leads from the enigmatic chamber of herbs and elixirs out into a corridor echoing faintly with the distant clanging of metal, a chorus that lures you towards the playful heart of the castle. You follow the lively sounds to a bustling corner where color, laughter, and the occasional clatter of feasting meet in harmony. You've arrived just in time for a jester's performance, a time when the castle's ordinary rhythms pause in appreciation of humor and clumsy elegance. Imagine entering a medieval variety show. Ignore the absence of cameras and stage lights, and instead envision a room filled with nobles and servants alike, sharing in the sheer delight of spontaneity. It's a place where social hierarchies momentarily dissolve, laughter serving as the great equalizer. Jesters, those illustrious royal clowns, take center stage with the kind of playful confidence often seen in viral dance challenges. They juggle, they jest, and, oh yes, they royally roast. One particular jester commands the room with a deftness typically reserved for seasoned stand-up comedians. His quips fly as fast as arrows, targeting everyone from the grumpy lord at the high table to the fidgety scullion girl giggling against the wall. He's dressed in a colorful motley of checked patterns and bells that jingle with each exaggerated gesture. Because if you can't hear humor, are you even medievally laughing? A quirky fragment from this jester's toolkit might surprise you. Exaggerated mockery performed with vegetables, often brandishing a leek like a microphone for effect. You could say he was quite literally ready to veg out between punchlines. A medieval earworm and turnip-size appreciation with no pun burdens omitted. Fun fact, jesters had remarkable freedom in their humor, permitted to point out courtly absurdities that others wouldn't dare to mention. Historians still debate whether their role was purely comic relief or if they served a greater purpose as truth-tellers. A social safeguard wrapped up in streaming hilarities. Were jesters agents of change or chaos, laugh provocateurs, or veiled advisors behind painted smiles and quips? As you watch, the jester embarks on an improvisational tale, weaving absurd heroics with snippets of local gossip. He tosses verbal confetti to the receptive crowd, whose laughter swells in the stone chamber, much like the amusement found when losing hours to those addictive scrolling sessions online. His antics aren't just about humor. They're also a masterclass in the fine art of survival, balancing ridicule and flattery as skillfully as juggling a set of hay forks around expectations. Throw in some dramatic pratfalls, a bawdy song, and a mildly anachronistic limerick, and you've got yourself a medieval YouTube entertainment compendium. You can't help but notice shifts in mood and sentiment, a liberal dose of nostalgia as they respond with rhythmic claps and cries for encore scattered between gales of mirth, sharing the room's buoyancy across eras. And in this mirthful tear in time, you see not just comedy, but a joyful unraveling of human truths, the kind that transcends centuries. The jesters remind us why laughter remains an eternal part of the human toolkit, not just for forgetting our woes, but for reshaping them. They might not have realized it, but each chuckle built bridges, taking ghostly echoes of solemn duty and turning them into colorful epitaphs. With a final flourish and a sweeping bow, the jester exits like a fading echo of joy, leaving behind a room filled with lingering smiles and summer breeze giggles. It's a shared fellowship, filled with humor-laden embers we can find smoldering still in today's wit-drenched narratives, remnants of shadowed corners where sincere laughter summons delight between delicate ground. You step back into the corridor, buoyed by the enduring power of laughter, a momentary reprieve from life's inevitable gravity. A long echo resounds, today as it did then, as a cascade of notes as familiar today as in days past. Laughter that dares, lingers, and softly cradles the rhythms of life. After the laughter has faded and the jester's antics are but a memory of glee, you find yourself meandering through the quieter, more contemplative parts of the castle. The echoes of merriment still linger gently, like distant waves lapping at the shores of your thoughts. As you wander into an alcove filled with intricate tapestries and softly flickering candlelight. It's here, where time slows to a gentle pulse, that the realities of the castle's day-to-day life wrap around you in a warm, woven embrace. The air is thick with the scent of beeswax and fibers, like the comforting aroma of an old sweater pulled from a cedar chest after a long season. You find a bench and settle down, taking in the artistry of the tapestries. Incredible details woven into a narrative of bold knights and fair maidens. It's like scrolling through medieval Instagram feeds, each scene meticulously curated to tell a story or brag about the latest chivalric feat. But unlike pixels, these threads possess texture. each one dyed with the hue of human hands, crafting tale after tale. These works of art are more than just decorative. They're repositories of history, conveying messages, morals, and cultural norms of the time. Storylines unravel through the intricate stitches, sharing tales of valor, failed quests, and reminders of powerful patronage filtering through time, much like the folklore and myths whispered in present daylight. A charming quirk catches your eye. In one corner of a tapestry, you find a humorous side note stitched in, an image of a particularly rebellious rabbit finding its way into the picture. Historians believe these whimsical additions often included subtle jokes or personal touches by the weavers, hiding Easter eggs centuries before they were ever plastic and filled with chocolate. Historians still argue whether these tapestries served primarily as narratives or whether they merely fulfilled a utilitarian purpose of insulation within those drafty halls. Were they really just opulent windbreaks, or did they stand as communicative art, bearing messages only understood by select eyes? You brush your fingers gently against the fabric, feeling a connection to the artisans who painstakingly wove these threads. This was their medium, their canvas, their song. It's easy to see how a bit of wool and a keen imagination could serve as portals to other realms, transporting the mind beyond the cold embrace of stone and mortar. As you absorb the rich details and vibrant hues, you can't help but feel a kinship with those who crafted these cultural tapestries, imagining they too faced the occasional creative block. Perhaps they spent late nights pondering the perfect shade or bemoaning that stitch just out of place, not unlike an artist perfecting his latest tweet across the spectrum with humorous flair. Soft footsteps echo down the corridor, pulling you from your reverie. A servant passes by, barely acknowledging your presence, time maintaining its quiet continuity while your thoughts float in reverie, clearly one accessory to barely remembered nautical voyaging dreams, as if itself a carefully bordered whisper-kept illusion. With a smirk of recognition, you rise from the bench, feeling a renewed appreciation for the storytelling legacy etched in delicate fibers, whether displayed as a noble family's billboard, like a digital status adornment, or a needlepoint of resistances across time's thread. These two share a collective story, one accidentally but beautifully connected across ages. You continue your wander, the magic of the tapestries lingering like an old, cherished lullaby as you make your way toward the celebratory hum of the Great Hall. Their stories travel beyond the woven, fragments worn with quiet hush bent through stone cloisters into an epic as hauntingly human as the weavers who've left these secrets strung to time. The atmosphere shifts again as you ease back into the lively environment of the Great Hall, now buzzing with preparations for an evening feast. The hall is a tapestry of its own, a rich mosaic of sights and sounds as servants hustle about, laying long tables with the finest fare the castle can muster. There's a symphony of clattering dishes, the rhythmic thud of loaves stacked high, and the nostalgic hum of anticipation that floats in the air, a festive heartbeat shared by revelers past and present. The transformation from the daily grind to festivity is akin to switching from work mode to party mode, albeit with more earthly delights and infinitely more roast meats. The room is a sensory feast, reveling in the experience as much as the taste, a medieval symphony of indulgence and opulence. Imagine the table stretching before you, groaning under the weight of elaborate displays meant to dazzle both the eye and the palate. picture pies filled not only with fruits and meats, but brimming with the grandeur of artistry, like a show-stopping centerpiece where theater and taste spectacularly collide. It's a culinary doodle you might tag Come Our Feast goals, where you given the chance to enlighten history with hashtags. Here's a weird tidbit to tickle your taste buds. Medieval folks adored items like strikes of peacock pie, roasted fowl resurrected back to plumage for display. It was about spectacle as much as flavor. Serving a bird also cleverly insinuated standing, still plea within fake plumage mirage. Dramatic entrances have indeed been historically revered, even when culinary renowned. And like any event worthy of note, fashion struts its flamboyant stuff alongside delicacies. The hall is dotted with everyone from nobles wearing finery vibrant enough to rival their jeweled settings, to guests sporting embroidery detailed enough to draw the eye from a distance on their claret-infused doublets. Medieval feasting was both meal and catwalk, making a statement akin to debuting next season's styles. Historians still argue whether these grand feasts were mostly about the food, or if they presented subtle political posturing, a show of wealth, influence, or simply a masterclass in dinner table diplomacy. Imagine flexing your culinary prowess as a power move, glancing at an opponent over a decadent swan pate. Now, look to one role often overlooked. The steward, with eyes like hawks, watches over the event with a knowledge that speaks of understanding musical chaos enveloped via marinated mantra, rolling towards rhythmic fruition. They're ringside in the orchestration of communal indulgence, ensuring that everyone from the lowliest squire to the chieftain finds their honeyed wine brimming beyond fulsome restraint. As the evening colors deepen, the fire in the hearth grows brighter, casting a warm glow about the room. Laughter spills from every corner, their melodies merging effortlessly with clinks of goblets toasting stories anew. A spectrum of happiness radiating, mirroring the candles flickering atop stone ledges like stars breaking through twilight. Here, among the raucous camaraderie and the delicate tickle of aromas, you discover what makes this place truly remarkable. More than just nourishment of the body, these gatherings were about traditions binding people together in merriment and shared history, reminding everyone of the timeless comforts of breaking bread together. You sip your goblet, a mix of honey, herbs, and history, alongside the revelers, toasting the enduring spirit of human connection. In this great hall, awash with laughter and legend, you feel the centuries fold away, leaving only the essence of unity. As the evening dances onward, the air itself seems to thrum with an ancient energy that beckons you to linger a while longer. The hall, living, adds layers to its stone and timber embrace. Another night faded into the eternal feast, its echoes gently brushing against the quiet corners of your own festive memories. As the festivities in the great hall continue to wrap the castle in a warm, jubilant embrace, you slip away, following the quieter echoes of corridors that weave like the tendrils of dreams throughout the castle's quieter wings. The feast has filled the air with laughter and the comforting presence of companionship. Yet your curiosity finds another path, one sprinkled with gentle whispers of the supernatural, carrying you deeper into the night's velvety embrace. Your steps take you toward a tower said to be the resting place of more than just echoing footsteps and moonlit shadows. The castle's signature ghost tower looms ahead, its stones thick with legend and spectral intrigue. Embrace the shiver that runs down your spine, for this space is one piece of architecture history credits with far more than its fair share of eerie tales and mysterious phenomena. The legend goes that lights sometimes flicker in the windows when no living soul inhabits the chamber. Is it just drafts that set the torches alight, or do they signal the presence of those who once lived within its timeless walls? You're in familiar company whenever your imagination conjures a fantasy at the margin of whispered breaths filling your ears. Even the skeptics struggle to brush away the possibility. This time, allow yourself to chuckle at one curious tale about the spectral beast that guards the tower. Some say a ghostly hound of formidable size and resembling a 2-week-old loaf of bread, more than the hastily imagined Cerberus. Was it a diligent guardian against supernatural trespassers, or merely a fence to warn off nighttime revelers? Historians still argue whether these stories originated to keep people from snooping around, or if they indeed pointed to the presence of something more, something tucked away in the folds of the castle's walls, a spirited remnant of its past citizens, refusing to quietly drift into obscurity. Stepping inside the tower's musty spiral of stairs, each step reverberates with a feeling as old as time, harmonizing with the rhythm of your heartbeat, a metronome of hushed anticipation. The air is cool, flecked with dust motes that resemble fireflies in suspended animation as moonlight dribbles through the narrow windows, painting the stone in ethereal hues. Standing quietly at the tower's peak, you watch not only the feast's iridescent glow, dancing in moonlit gardens below, but also the horizon, a tapestry of navies and shadowed blues streaked with cloud wisps, whispers of the night softly transitioning across layered time. There's a peace here that beckons nostalgia, the kind that symbolizes reflections and whispers tethered to your own personal reality, irrespective of centuries past. Your breath comes easily as you lean against the stone's smooth coolness. This blend of awe-inspiring architecture and ancient storytelling providing solace. That is the inherent magic woven into this castle's fabric. Stories and experiences, binding lives long past through lingering connections. A gentle reminder that the heart of any home beats strongest in memories shared across time. Below you, the feasting continues, notes of song and laughter rising to meet you like a familiar lullaby. It's a serenade shared beneath faint moonlight, wrapped in historical embrace, offering the gift of perspective beneath the tapestry of stars. As you stand in the ghost tower, surrounded by centuries of narrative woven into these strong stone pillars, a new story gently forms, not of solitary legend, but of cherished echoes blending past and present in a lullaby that thrives in quiet spaces. Every seemingly forgotten place possesses its own melody, treasures to explore, secrets left just out of reach, sighing precisely at the edge of temporary ambiguity, now perhaps gradually restored into your gaze. And with a final glance back at the gabled horizon dipped in memory's twilight shadow, you feel the pull of the castle calling you to continue this journey. A gentle reminder that within such spaces, spirits linger, waiting to be remembered, touching your own self. Whether in melodious murals or ghostly whispers, human presence fills this space beyond time, embracing you since your heart first beat in harmonious awe and appreciation for how far-reaching castle walls could extend around a traveler's thread and embrace.